Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Higher Moment Mastermind. I'm Sheila Lotzer, happy to be your host today, joined by my co-hosts, Vern Schellinger and Alki Thompson. Wave to the crowd. Vern is a former HR executive turned career coach. Alki is a recruiter. I'm a recruiter and a career coach. And so between the three of us, we have a sort of a wide variety of perspectives on both sides of the hiring aisle. So for those of you who are new to us, we treat this as an open Q&A. Whatever job search question you have, you are welcome to toss it out to us, and we are happy to address it. And look, if you guys have advice for each other, feel free to chime in because everybody's on the journey together, right? And we all have different experiences. So with that, we'll go ahead and just open it up. Who has a question for us that we can address? Any question, resumes, interviews, networking, salary, any or all of it?
I'll throw one out, if that's all right.
Right.
How much do you pester in HR? Do you have that wonderful HR interview? They say they'll get back to you by mid next week.
Right.
You're ghosted.
Right. Yes.
You wait maybe a week and a half. You send an email, no response. You
Right.
assume the worst, which is probably true. But how much should you just let that go?
I would in general, let it go. That old expression, don't call us, we'll call you a minute, I mean, you have so one of the things that we do on this call is we help people walk a mile in the shoes of employers. Okay. And Leslie, have you ever been a hiring manager? Have you ever hired anybody?
I have, yes.
Okay. Did you remember what it was like? Maybe you weren't the recruiter, but you were a hiring manager, right? Do you remember what it was like when you had so much on your plate? I mean, regular, right? And recruiting was the last thing on your mind. And there were all of these candidates and you had to get back to them, but life happens, right? Well, that's exponential for an HR person or for a recruiter. They have all of these openings, all of these candidates, all of these pressures, all of these responsibilities. And so when they say, "Oh, we'll get back to you in a week and a half," that's their best intention, but life happens. Okay, everything takes 4 times longer than you think it will. So number one, in general, whenever an HR person says to you, "I'll get back to you in X time," add at least a week or two, at least. Okay, and even then, things happen, and not everybody has the same um, uh, system for categorizing their candidate for keeping track of their candidates. So they might say they want to get back to you, and then life happens. They forget that it's just so yes, you can follow up. There's no law against that. You're welcome to do that. Let's say maybe a week after they said they would get back to you. But here's the real truth. If you are a top contender, they will get back to you. Okay. They will track you down. They will send a carrier pigeon to your home. I mean, they will find you. They'll find. Now I realize for you, you need closure. But what I would like to say in these calls is that, your job as a job seeker is to be a farmer. You plant lots and lots and lots and lots of seeds because the birds, the wind, and the rain are going to eat 50% of them. Farmer does not worry about the one seed in the corner of the field, right? He just feels like, you know what, it's planted. If it sprouts, it sprouts. If that job is meant for you and they are interested, they will call you. They will find you. Now, the one exception here is if you are getting closer in this interview process and you feel like it's a good, let's say you've gone to a second level or third level, what have you, and you're really involved, right? And they've given you some good indications about your candidacy and you have another opportunity pending, maybe even an offer coming. And the job A, the one we're talking about, is really your first choice. And job B is your second choice, but you think that job B is going to be giving you an offer. Absolutely follow up with the HR person or the recruiter and say, look, job A, I want you to know you are my first choice. I have another offer pending that I believe is coming in, but I wanted to give you first right. I wanted to give you a heads up. That you absolutely should be doing because it gives them an opportunity to get to secure you, right? And what'll happen then is if you get in touch with them and you say, "Hey, job A, you're my first choice. I've got I've got another opportunity here." One of two things is going to happen. You're going to get one of two responses. Either they're going to say, "Oh, Leslie, thank you for," I mean, like this, with this tone of voice. "Thank you for letting us know. We'll just see what we can do to expedite things. Oh, we'll get this next interview. What's your timing?" I mean, they'll get very animated about it. If you're not the top choice, they'll say, "Oh, Leslie, thank you for letting us know. We can't we can't hold you back. all the best, please,
Yeah.
do what you need to do in your job search, okay? You're going to get one of those two responses, but that's only if you're far enough along in the process where both sides feel like there's something to go forward with, right? But otherwise, if it's just you've had a quick HR screening, it's a seed in your soil, let it go, keep moving on, no reason to follow up. They will follow up with you if you're a top contender. Is that helpful?
Yep, absolutely. Intuitive, as I thought. Let it
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, just let it go. Vern or Alki, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, let me just add, a couple of years ago, we had the same conversation with Jamie Below, who was at the American Bankers Association. And this was a real situation.
Mm-hmm.
And Shira said, call him. She called him and she got an interview the next day.
Mm-hmm.
She was their number one choice.
Right.
They didn't want to lose her.
Right.
Wow.
So
That's right.
that's evidence that what we're telling you really does
Right.
work if you are the number one choice.
Stage, but at that stage, notice
stage,
the
yeah.
difference. She was already
Yeah.
far along in the process. They already kind of had the love going on, right? Not the HR level, not the recruiter level, the down the path. And that's right. Her, she called and they're like, oh, wait, don't want to lose you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
It's funny, before this call, I had an epiphany about this, but just to echo Shira, I was thinking about this too before the call. You can't say it any better than she said it about farming. And I just talked to my dad yesterday. I grew up on a farm, southern roots, northern branches. My dad just got soybeans in the field, so I know all about sprouting, planting, fertilizing, weeding, all those types of things. And it's a process. It takes time. But the epiphany that came to me was Shira and I recruit Amazon. You can order something, the day that it's coming, the time that it's coming. If there's a problem, we can track it with Amazon, but recruiting, especially on the HR level, can be like old school post office, especially, further back in the day when you put an envelope in the mail, you have no idea when it's going to get there. You have no idea at all. And it's best to apply, put it in the mailbox, walk away. Now, of course, be diligent, and I would too, because I tell people all the time, call this person. This is how you check on it. This is how you not come off too strong. Ask this question. There's all kinds of ways to follow up, but for the most part, as it's been said by Vern and Shira, put it in the mailbox, walk away, start working on your next envelope.
Right.
Forget about it.
That's right.
Yep.
Good point. Good point. All right. So Lydia, then Amanda, and then Lisa.
Yes, good morning again, everybody. And I really, really love the analogy that you gave about farming, Shira, because if I had heard this before, I wouldn't have been that anxious in the past, because I went in about maybe 8 months ago, started looking very actively, and it was just like one no to one disappointment to one we'll get back to you and all that, and it got to a point where I kind of even gave up. And for the last maybe 6 weeks that I've been here, I don't know if it's here or it was just timing or attitude, or I don't know what it is. I was contacted by a very good company right here in Reston, an IT company, and the recruiter contacted me on LinkedIn. I was so excited, but I had to let it go when she didn't get back to me, and I reached out to her. She didn't get back to me. I just said, you know what, I've gone through enough of this. I'm not going to continue. And then on LinkedIn again, I got contacted by somebody. I shared it with Shira yesterday, and somebody also told me about another opening. And I've had 2 phone interviews, and I'm ready to do 2 in-person or virtual interviews. So, like Shira said, it takes time, and you just have to keep going and sowing the seeds.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add that to what you said.
Plant, right? You are a farmer. That is your job. Plant tons and tons of seeds. You never know which ones are going to sprout, but you've got to be patient, right? To wait. Yeah. Thanks, Lydia. Amanda.
Sorry, taking notes and also keeping in touch with friends.
Mhm.
Gotta tell you a lot of things, especially when you're on the job search. Anyway, other stuff. Yeah, I really like the analogy of, planting seeds. I don't have a farmer background, but I played a lot of like farming video games because I'm a nerd. And that is definitely true. You just gotta plant a lot. Um anyway, I have a different question if that's okay. Yeah, I and funny enough, I was going to ask you, Shira, about this later on, but I figured I'd get this ball rolling now. I know how important networking is when it comes to the job search, but I'm not quite sure how to go about it. I know the classic ones of you reach out to friends and family, but what other strategies are there? Like, and I know there are a lot, so and a lot of ways you could do it. So like, what do you think are maybe some of the tried and true best strategies to focus on, at least to get you started?
All right. Well, you've just opened up a wonderful, wonderful can here. This is one of my favorite topics, as is Vern's as well. And I know Alfie too is very much into networking. So we could spend literally the next hour answering that question and then some. In fact, Vern and I recently gave a co-presentation on networking to a group. And so let me I'll speaking of seeds, I'll plant a few here. Okay. And then Vern, obviously, please feel free to pick up. So look, when you are networking, this, I'm so glad you brought this up, Amanda, because I know everybody on this call could benefit from this question. So when you're thinking about your networking, I want you to think about it as if you're fishing in a pond, okay? And in that pond, you have a bunch of goldfish, right? That are people who understand what you do, okay? You're all kind of in that same pond together. So Amanda, in your case, it's going to be communications, and somebody else's case, it's going to be, Christine's going to be marketing, or, somebody else is going to be HR or accounting or whatever it is. But you have people who know what you do, either the profession that you have, which I call your lane, or the community that you're in, which is your sector. Okay. And I say that because that's going to be your most powerful networking. Sure. Can your next door neighbor provide you a job lead? Of course. Can the person you go to church with provide you a lead? Yes. Can the person you go to the gym with? Of course. All of these people can help you. But the friends and family that people sort of relegate to, those are going to not necessarily be your best leads. Why? Because they may or may not understand what you do. They may or may not understand how to best help you. In fact, if anything, sometimes the people closest to you can inadvertently steer you off the wrong path because they know you and they're like, oh, you've got these skills. I think you should go into blah, blah, blah. And that field, that sector may have nothing to do with what you're supposed to be doing. They're very well meaning, but not necessarily going to give you the best advice. If you know your path, that assumes that you know your path, go find your fish ponds. Now, how do you do that? Well, LinkedIn is the best, to me, one of the best ways. And there are all kinds of ways. You can go to associations. There are these, chapters and networking groups. All of those are very important. Meetup groups. But one of the ways that I always recommend to people to do is use LinkedIn. And I'm not talking about LinkedIn's job board, not the job board. LinkedIn's search bar, the search bar in the upper left-hand corner of your page. That is the place where you can start putting in keywords. You can start putting in titles. You can start putting in names of organizations. You can start really kind of deep diving into this world. In fact, I'm going to share my screen real quick. And we're not going to go into a whole training now because we don't have the time for that, but I am going to share with you guys a video that I've done that could be helpful to you. But in your LinkedIn, right here in this search bar, you can start putting in keywords. You can't break this, okay? This is just a database. So I'm the one that I always use, the classic one I always use in my trainings. I just say director of marketing. So let's say, so Christine, I know would relate to this one because that's her field. So I put in director of marketing. I'm going to hit the people button in the upper left-hand corner. And what's going to come up? In my case, over 4 million people who are in marketing, right? But you see, when you put those keywords in, LinkedIn is focused, first of all, in the algorithm will pull up the title, the headline that somebody has in their LinkedIn profile. So marketing communication strategy, director of marketing, senior director of marketing, director of digital marketing, right? LinkedIn first looks at that headline to match up with your keywords. So you want to be
Mhm.
thoughtful about what keywords you put in there, Amanda, right? So in your case, if you want to put in, you know, like communication specialist, something like that, you want to find people who not only do what you do, but do it at your level. Why? Those are the people who are going to hear about opportunities that are not right for them, but could be right for you. Jobs that are not right for them, but could be right for you, because people are getting approached by jobs all the time. Recruiters call them, colleagues call them, people send out notes on listservs and social media and say, hey, I've got a job for, you know, whatever. Does anybody know anyone? That's what we call the hidden market. Employers are doing that all the time. They are sending notes out to their community and saying, hey, everybody, who do you know? They are hoping that in that fish pond, one of the goldfish is going to refer another goldfish. So if an employer, Amanda, is looking for a communication specialist and they talk to a communication specialist, that person might say, not right for me, it's right for my friend Amanda. How are they going to know Amanda? You got to start reaching out. So you find the people and then you start reaching out to the people. So Nora and Megan and Alejandra, right? All these people could be people that could be in your, could be, oops, that could be, come in your, that could come into your network, but you've got to reach out to them. And there are ways to do this. One of the ways is certainly to go directly in the front door and hit the connect button. And if you do hit the connect button, make sure to add a note. Okay. And I'm going to actually share a couple of messages for you that you can use. But when you reach out to this person, you want to make a quick connection, a relational connection. Hey, so-and-so, looks like, you know, we may share some career interests. Wanted to see if you'd be open to connecting, possibly having a Zoom call to explore synergies, something like that. So you make the connection of why you're reaching out to them. If it's a second level person, which this person is, okay, you would reach out to, you can mention the name of the person that you are, that you're mutually connected through. So I'm connected through Mark Goldstein and this guy, David. And so, and actually I would, and in this case, I have 3 other people. So I would click on all the mutual connections and I'd look at all the people who I'm connected with and I'd name one of them. I'd name drop. I'd say, hi, Nora, you and I are mutually connected through Jamie Notter. I noticed that we have some career synergies here, wanted to see, or similar career interests, wanted to see if you'd be open to exploring some synergies. And what you do then, Amanda, is you start planting seeds. There's the seed analogy. These are more seeds. And what I would recommend that you do is do seed, plant. Do a ton of them. Why? Because so many people do not check their LinkedIn. You can send all of these different connection requests, but most people aren't going to think. I mean, right now, I'm sure most people on this call, you probably have invitations sitting in your LinkedIn box and you just haven't been checking it. That's normal. People get busy. They just forget. They don't think of LinkedIn as top of mind, like somebody like me, Alfie, or Vern would, okay? So they may not see it, and that's okay. That's why you've got to plant lots of seeds. A few of those people will likely reach back. And if they do, once they hopefully accept your invitation, then I'd write them another note because they may not have seen your note. And you say, hey, so-and-so, thanks for reaching out, or thanks for connecting with me. Would you be open to a quick Zoom call so we can get to know each other? If so, I'd be happy to toss out a few dates. And if they say yes, then you literally toss out a few dates, like 3, okay? Not 10, like 3. And then they can have something to choose from, because what you don't want to say when scheduling networking calls, you don't want to simply say, oh, so-and-so, just let me know when you're available. They're not going to let you know when they're available. It's too many times. It's just too overwhelming. You're the one who wants to meet with them. So you provide usually 3 options. Then if none of those options are available for them, then they'll go ahead and let you know what they can do. Okay. So I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna also, while I have Vern and Alki talk about from their perspective, because we all have lots of things to say about this. I just gave you one little slice. What I'm gonna do is put into the chat a presentation that I did. I have a job search videos on my website. One of them is called Accessing the Hidden Job Market. I'm gonna pop that into the chat. But I'm going to actually put 2 things in the chat. I need everybody to listen. Everybody listen up. Listen, right? Eyes up here. Okay. The video that you see on my website called Access the Hidden Job Market, that's an older presentation I did a couple years ago. I'm mentioning that because recently, like I said, Vern and I did one on this, and I added some slides. It's not in the video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a separate PowerPoint in the chat. That video, that PowerPoint has a few of these messages that I was talking about that you can actually repurpose for yourself when you are reaching out to people, whether you're reaching out just generally just to network, whether you're reaching out because you want to find an internal champion, like meaning you're trying to reach out to someone and make the connection and say, hey, so and so, I applied for a job, and try to get somebody to recommend you for the job because people are overwhelmed. I mean, these days employers can get 1 to 200 responses within 24 to 48 hours easily. Okay, very overwhelmed. So you got to get noticed, and to get noticed, you need to have a champion internally who can help you get noticed. So I'm gonna put, while Vern and Alki share, I'm gonna put both those things in the chat for everybody. Okay, so Vern, you want to start first?
Sure. So at Contacts Count, we're all about making your contacts count. And so I'm going to pick up exactly where Shira left off. So let's suppose you've connected with somebody on LinkedIn and you're about to have the conversation with them. The first thing that you should think about from a networking, as you approach networking, is make it as simple as possible. And the way we define networking, it's about teaching and giving. So when you have this conversation with this other person, it's your opportunity to teach them as much as you can about who you are, what your skills are, what you're looking for. Certainly in the job search, you all know how important networking is, because the more people that know about who you are, what your skills are, what you're looking for, the greater likelihood that one of them someplace it's going to be one of those seeds that's going to get connected to a potential job opportunity. At the same time, you can't make that conversation a one-way, let me tell you all about myself and how can you help me in my job search. So the giving part is making sure you allow some time, Amanda, tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do, and learn as much as you can in that 15 minutes or 30 minutes, however long the call goes, so that you might be able to help them or give back to them in some way. Even if it's as simple as, hey, I saw this article, after we talked, I saw this article in this magazine or this website or whatever, thought you might be interested in. And if you are, I'd, happy to send it along. And simple things like that begin to build a relationship. The more you learn about them and the more they learn about you, like I said, the greater likelihood you can help one another in one way or the other. Elke?
Yeah, Vern's our Contacts Count guy, and Shira covered it pretty well. I'll also just add, Shira, we talk a lot on this call about trust. I like to talk about, who you know. So you can imagine going to an open, happy hour or some meeting, and you walk in and you see, groups of people together, they're talking, they know each other. You don't know anybody. You walk in, so you're a stranger. If you walk in with somebody else who goes, hi, this is my friend, everybody's like, oh, hi, boom. That's how the job search works too. You can apply for a job and then be a stranger, or through your network, if somebody recommends you, you're likely to move quicker through the process, gain more trust, and get further ahead. It's not a guarantee, but we recommend you use your network for that reason, because people know you, there's trust, there may be a recommendation, somebody may introduce you to someone that you couldn't if you just applied to and those other 200 or 300 people are ahead of you, like Shira mentioned. So using your network, we always say, and I'm saying it after 13 years of recruiting, best way to get a job. You can apply all day and all night. They'll probably call you back. You might get an interview. You might get the job. Much quicker, much easier, much more efficient if you use your network.
100%. Great. So Lisa, Diana, and Tammy, I also want to acknowledge that I invited Erica Schmelzer onto this call because she actually has a little story that happened to her yesterday about interviewing that I wanted her to share. So I want to make sure that actually after Tammy, let's make sure that Erica, you have some time to share a really interesting, good tip, good best practice she figured out. Lisa?
Thank you. Good morning. I have sort of a comment and 2 quick questions. One, thank you for the information in the start of the call regarding the farming analogy. I think one of the frustrations is that when you mentioned things happen, and if someone says, we'll call you back in a week or whatever, and they don't, then think you just have to deal with it.
Mhm.
I think the frustrating thing for me is that I'm not allowed to miss a deadline. So I have to be a woman of my word. And if I say I'm going to do it, then I have to do it. I don't have any options.
Mhm.
So I understand when things happen,
Mhm.
there are exceptions, but when over time it becomes the norm and not the exception, that's when it becomes very frustrating. So just wanted to add that comment. And then my other quick questions, and I'll give both of them very quickly, is it ethical to remove some of your education from your resume? I often receive I'm overqualified for roles because of that. And then the second question is, I'm seeing a lot on applications where you can opt in to have your resume reviewed by a human versus AI. What are the advantages and disadvantages of checking that box?
Interesting questions. As far as the first one goes, that's an interesting one about education. My personal opinion is that look, in your resume in general, your resume is not supposed to be about everything you've done forever and always, right? Your resume needs to simply be accurate about what you do put on there. If it's there, it should be accurate. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have everything that you've ever done. As far as education goes, look, that's a tricky one. I mean, I don't know what the education is you're referring to, but I know for some people, the occasional person who happens to have a doctorate, okay, oftentimes that can be a limiting factor. It's a personal choice, right? I think do you put it on? Do you not put it on? I really believe that that's up to you. If you do have, but again, if you do have something, that thing needs to be accurate, right? But whether or not you put it on, I believe that. And Alki, you're shaking your head as well. I don't think that there's a necessary need to, just like you've had some people have certifications, some people have, whatever else that you've done. I like to say it is the equivalent of, if you were 16 years old and you flip burgers at Wendy's, that doesn't necessarily need to go on your resume, right? So it's just right. So Alki, do you have a thought on that?
You you nailed it. And I echo. You're in charge of what goes on your resume. You can put whatever, how much. Just make sure you're ready to speak to it and it's truthful. And when asked about it, you're ready to answer any kind of question about it. So let that be the driver.
Yeah. As to your other question, this is a new topic. This is not one that I don't think any one of us has expertise in because I don't think anybody has expertise in it. I mean, the whole AI versus what a colleague of mine, she calls it HI, human intelligence. Uh, I
I
don't
feel
know.
like it's such a lie though to use AI on your resume.
Oh, that's a different question. I think we can address that. I think what who was it, Lisa, you were asking is,
Mhm.
you're asking the employer is asking you whether you want humanized to view your resume versus AI to review your resume, right?
Right.
Correct. It's
Yeah.
a checkbox.
As a
Yes.
checkbox. Yeah, it's a great question. I don't even have a direct answer for you. Other than,
Okay.
I mean, personally, I think that having humans view it is going to be better than
Yeah.
that's my opinion on that.
I think that humans can like show their feelings and show what's going on personally better if they do it themselves versus what, you know, AI would push out with some non-emotional, like very cut and dry
Yeah.
resume.
I think that would be the more the direction that I would go. And I mean, AI might be able to pick up some things that a human can't. There might be some
Hmm.
keywords, and I'll tell you, even for myself as a recruiter, there are times when I scan a resume. Remember, recruiters scan resumes. We don't have time to read them. Okay,
But
I can easily scan a resume, and I could miss something, and I have in the past. I've literally missed a skill that somebody had that's sort of buried in between the lines. And then I screen them and I actually tell the person, oh, I didn't notice blah, blah, blah in your resume. They're like, oh, no, it was there. And I'm like, oh, wow, I missed that. Whereas AI probably wouldn't, right? Because it's going to pick up on the keywords that the employer is looking for. But on the other hand, it could screen out too. So I don't think there's any perfect way to do it. I think as time
okay.
goes on, we're all going to learn, right, about what's best practice. So hopefully,
Yeah. It's kind of a mystery as to what's coming up in the future.
for sure. All right, so moving right along, Diana?
Yes, you can hear me, yes?
Cam, yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
this isn't a new topic, but Alpi, when you were talking with Leslie at the very end, you said there are all, and it was the emphasis on the word all that has me asking this question, all kinds of ways to follow up and to check on the progress of your resume. And I know I'm not doing all of them. And if you and Shira and also Vern could just very quickly review, what is it, I mean, the basic things that would help you feel that you're making some progress and the resume just didn't go into that black box again.
Vern, do you want to start? I'll pick up on your thread.
No, go ahead and start. I need to think about it.
Okay. So it really, to me, it depends on what stage of the process you're talking about. If you're talking about the very first level, meaning you have submitted your application and you haven't heard back. That one, okay, Diana, that's the black box that most people are talking about. What's interesting about that level is that most job candidates don't take a next step. They sort of assume if I apply, someone's going to see it and someone's going to get back to me. That's not necessarily the case. In fact, it often isn't the case. It is very much the reason why that we always recommend finding an internal champion to flag your candidacy. In fact, it's incredibly important to do that, folks, when you are applying on a job board. Because let me back up the train. I said it quickly before, but I'm going to say it slower this time. When you apply on a job board, LinkedIn's job board, Indeed, Career Builder, whatever, especially for remote jobs, which proliferate now, it is quite common for employers to receive 100 to 200 resumes in the first 24 to 48 hours. I am not exaggerating. I've seen it happen on my own desk. On top of which, the way that these job boards show the resumes to a recruiter is such that it makes it hard for us to really understand what you do. Because, for example, in LinkedIn, and I'm not going to share my screen now because it would be a little unconfidential for me to do that. But I have some searches that I've done, right, where I could show you what I see as the recruiter. What happens is I get a little, this is LinkedIn, I get a little box, and literally what it says your name, and then it says your experience, meaning your employer, and then the job title, employer, job title, employer, job title. That's my 2-second scan. I don't even see your resume yet. Your resume is there, but I have to actually download your resume to see it. For me to do the quick glance, all I'm seeing is your experience section, which means that it's very easy, if it's a pair of eyeballs that's reading it, very easy for me to overlook you. On top of which, if I've already gotten the 200 resumes and I'm already swamped, if you've replied a week later, I may not even be able to check it because now I'm on to the fifth 500 resumes and I literally don't have time to review it all. Let alone if I was a recruiter that had, 30 open requisitions on my desk and thousands of candidates, okay? So the black hole thing very much does exist. So what do? You go to LinkedIn, you use the search bar, you put in the name of the organization, hit enter, hit the people button, and you will see the names of the people who work at that company who have LinkedIn profiles. And you try to figure out the name of the hiring manager, best you can, see if you're maybe second level connected to them. If you are, you leverage your first level mutual connection. You reach out to that person. So let's say John is the hiring manager and Susie is your first level. You reach out to Susie through LinkedIn and through email and say, hey, Susie, hope all's well. I noticed on LinkedIn you're connected to John Smith. I recently applied for a job. John works at Acme Company. I recently applied for the blah, blah role. Would you consider forwarding my cover letter and resume to John for extra consideration? That's what you're trying to do, extra consideration. It's flagging your candidacy. You've got to get noticed. Otherwise, you will get lost. And frankly, you can do that with multiple people. You don't have to just do with Susie. You can do with Frank and Brad and Ashley and everybody else. I had it happen once years ago. I was on a panel and it was me and several other recruiters. And the funny part is that we were talking to a group of HR job seekers. Wrap your head around that. There are a bunch of HR people in the room who were all job seekers. You'd think that HR people know how to look for a job. No, HR people often, they're just like you. They get into a job, right? Vern, you were like that way. You were in HR. When they get into a
Yeah.
job, so it's like, I don't know what to do. So we were recruiters teaching them how to, right, find us. And I remember there's this woman sitting next to me, and she said, she was talking about this whole idea of getting noticed. And she goes, hey guys, she goes, I had 5 people champion my candidacy. 5 people say, hey, you should. They were like, okay, we'll meet her. And she got the job. 5
Yeah.
people. You can be a squeaky wheel with this kind of thing. It's fine. You can have people recommend you, because you know what? The employer might be very happy that you did that. Otherwise, you would have gotten lost in the 500th candidate. So that at that stage, yes, I would go ahead and nudge and get yourself noticed. Once you've had the interview, that's where question number 1 came up this morning around, now what do
Right.
I do?
Okay.
Should I be following up? That's not a black hole anymore. That's, you've already established a connection. Now they're in the vetting. Now you're in the vetting process of, should we move you forward? That's where I say pack your patience. That's where I say this is a seed planting kind of a thing, and you need to wait. Could you send a note a couple weeks later? Sure. And by the way, Lisa, to your, I think it was Lisa who you mentioned this around keeping your word, right? The thing is this, when an employer says to you, oh, we should get back to you in a week and a half, even if they say we will get back to you in a week and a half or 2, what they really mean is we expect to, because there are so many variables that happen, right? Everything from people go on vacation to this bright, shiny new candidate just showed up. All these different things happen. They will probably are very well intentioned, but the way you need to hear it is not a I will, but I expect to. And that hopefully will help in terms of managing your own expectations, because just life happens and they've got, so many candidates that they're dealing with. But it's really at that stage of the vetting process, that's where you want to be a little more judicious around following up, because again, you're just part of vetting. It's the first part that you can be a little bit more, assertive to get yourself noticed. Does that help, Diana?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Werner, Alki, anything you want to share on that?
Yeah, let me just add again the importance of networking. And when I talk about teaching and giving, and Shira's talking about an internal champion, someone who can promote you, inside the company or make that reference. The more they know about you, the in other words, I could say, hey, Shira's I want to talk to my friend at so and such and such a company because Shira applied there and I really like Shira and she's a great person and you really ought to hire her. That's a lot different than, let me tell you about Shira, let me tell you about her skills, let me tell you about her accomplishments, let me tell you about her community service work. You only get to that level of knowing a person after you've had, a number of conversations with them. Now, in the job search, you're going to talk to a lot of people, have lots of conversations. Hopefully they'll move you along somewhere and help you, but all of them won't turn into those types of relationships. But over time, the more people you have in your network that at Context Count, we refer to people as advocates, people who can advocate on your behalf to anyone, anywhere. And so in my career, I did 5 job searches, and the first 2 were very much like what all of you are going through right now. And I was just as frustrated, and I made as many mistakes. The last 3 jobs that I had came to me from the hidden job market.
Right.
I did not even know the job existed.
Right.
And somebody in my network called me and said, Vern, there's this opportunity here that I think you'd be a great fit for. And that's when you've developed a relationship with somebody who really knows you well enough and has your best interest in mind at all times, even when you're fully employed. So I just can't emphasize that enough.
Alki, any
Okay.
other thoughts?
Yep, I am way more thoughts than there's time for on this call. To that point, Diana, I'll say if you want to chat offline about the various ways and approaches to follow up, Shira gave a great one, and there's tons others. I think it's also a good point that Shira made for everyone. There's 2 levels to your job search. One is the beginning, when you're the stranger, you apply, and then it goes into, you call it the black box, you can call it the black hole, wherever it goes. The question is, who's seeing that first? And that's a whole training too. Maybe I'll talk to you about that, Shira, offline. I've thought about this often on this call and elsewhere. to show you guys what it looks like for a recruiter, when we come in the morning, if we're working in-house and we open up our computer and we turn on the system, we're like, all right, let me check on this director of marketing. And I open up my one of 30 different recruitments. And when I look in and I'm like, okay, I just posted it Monday, it's Wednesday. Wow, 295 people have applied.
Yep.
And what the recruiter does step by step, scouring or looking at each one of those, what my initial thoughts are when I see 295. I mean, for me, I'm like, all right, I better find somebody in the first 11, which is another whole conversation too. But that's one thing, just to see what the recruiter sees when it goes in.
Yep.
But that recruiter is your first point of, it could be your first point of contact. It is another whole thing too, once you have an interview. Whoever is your point of contact who's scheduling and setting that up and calling you back to say, hey, are you free Tuesday? That's a point of contact. And that becomes a person that you can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 different ways to follow up with that person based on what level interview you had. So there are 2 different boxes, and it is a longer conversation on the different approaches that you can take with either of them. But having an internal champion is your best way of, number one, finding out what the heck is happening with my recruitment. It doesn't just have to be LinkedIn either. There's also the internal job board of the company. So there's people who are applying there. So add in all those applicants with the others. And so a lot of times the recruiter who's on that recruitment is the person to try and find, because they're the direct person who's working that recruitment. It's not a guarantee that they're going to answer your LinkedIn ping, or if you directly call the company, which is another way. What you say to them is different. So there's a lot of things, Diana and others on this call, there's a lot of different approaches to take. Me being one myself, I have a billion recommendations. Being an internal recruiter and a headhunter like Shira, there's so many different approaches, but that probably is a longer conversation. So feel free to ping us offline.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Tammy is next, and then Erica, we're gonna have you go on. Okay, Tammy.
Great. Good morning. I did get contacted by a recruiter this week with an opportunity, and they had sent a job description to me. And I'm just wondering, do you have any recommendations for questions to validate or vet an opportunity, and also to sort of manage my own expectations? I will tell you, I asked the recruiter 4 questions, and I didn't necessarily get, in my mind, the best answers. I asked, how accurate is this job description? Have strong internal candidates been identified?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a defined interview process and who's involved?
Mm-hmm.
And how long has this search been underway? And what are the hiring manager's pain points?
Mm-hmm.
And what I was trying to get is, I will probably spend 10 to 20 hours preparing for an interview. And I need to know who I'm interviewing with. And if this, if at least on the surface, this is a real fit for me.
Yeah.
And they were loosey-goosey sort of with the interview process and who I would be meeting with.
Yeah.
And I felt it was a red flag about the time. It's been open like 7 or 8 months, and they couldn't really articulate what the pain points were.
To Alki's chat here, those are great questions, Tammy. I mean, we should do a whole session around those kinds of questions. They're all great. I don't even know where to begin here. What I would say, let me start at a high level, okay? I think what's important for everybody to understand is that you're going to have different, as Alki mentioned, different points of contact within a company. If your first point of contact is a recruiter, not the HR person, not the hiring manager, a recruiter. Not every company has a recruiter. Some companies are very, very small. They're 10 people, they're 50 people. They don't have a full-time recruiter, in which case you deal with the HR person if they have one, or the hiring manager. But if you're dealing with a recruiter, either internal recruiter or a third-party recruiter like me or Alki, that person, you'd think that they know more than they do, but oftentimes they don't. Because oftentimes the recruiter, number one, is dealing with so many jobs that they don't have time to get all of the insights. Now, somebody like me or Alki, we work on fewer searches, and so we're able to sort of get kind of more deeply into what the employer's needs are. But if it's a corporate recruiter and they've got 30 open jobs, I'm not kidding, like 30 open jobs, First of all, the hiring managers oftentimes do not give them enough information. That's just the reality of it. Vern, I know you've been in the corporate side of things and you know what that's like, right? Where the recruiter is is begging, literally begging the hiring manager to give them information. And the hiring manager is like, yeah, just get me a blah, blah, blah. Just here's the job description and blah, and I need a unicorn. But they're not necessarily giving them the depth of knowledge that they need. And so therefore, when Tammy, you're asking those questions, they may not be able to give you the information because they literally don't even have it. The hiring manager might, but they don't. Now, there's some things that they should understand around, for example, the process, but even that changes, right? So sometimes people are kind of making it up as they go along. They talk to the recruiter and they say, well, maybe John, maybe Sally, I don't know. And then halfway through the process, they shift it up like, well, now we want to add in more people. And oh, now we want to have a panel interview. They don't necessarily know the process because frankly, recruiting is an art and a science, or actually more of an art than a science. Okay. And people are sort of figuring it out. Now, if it's the government or if it's a very large corporation, they're more likely to have a standard process. But the smaller the organization, the more they're sort of kind of winging it. So they may not have all the information that you need. And that would be kind of my high level response, not to pick it all apart, but Tammy, I hope that's helpful to give a higher level sort of look.
Tammy, maybe I missed it. Was this a recruiter, an internal recruiter with a company, or was this an external recruiter?
No, it was an internal recruiter. So in my mind, they generally know a bit more than an external one. So
Yeah,
for example,
they should.
They should, but not necessarily. Again, if they've
Yeah.
had trouble getting in touch with the hiring manager, having that real deep dive sit down, they may not know. They just may not know. They probably should, but that all has to do with the internal dynamics.
Yeah, and so the internal dynamics, again, like there's great companies, there's good companies, there's not so good companies. There's companies that are great at recruiting, there's companies that are lousy at recruiting. So unfortunately, that's just the world you're dealing with. And so and I hear you, Tammy. As a candidate, you're going to put all this time in and effort to prepare for an interview, and you don't have the information that would really help you prepare as well as you'd like to. So that's very frustrating.
Yeah. And the other thing too is sometimes people will feel, I know Tammy, you didn't say this, but some people will feel like, well, if I don't have a great experience with the recruiter, maybe this isn't the right company. So one thing I would offer, again, not that you said this, Tammy, but some people might be thinking that that the two are not necessarily connected at all. An employer's recruiting process may have absolutely nothing to do with what it's going to be like for you on that job, because recruiting is a separate function, right? They may or may not have their act together, but the department you work with could be beautiful. The culture could be amazing, but the recruiting process, because it's not really a standardized thing, may be a one-off. And by the way, the converse is also true. You might have a fabulous engagement with the recruiter. You might fall in love with that recruiter or HR person. And then they have nothing to do with what it's going to be like on the job or in the culture, right? Because it's almost like its own separate kind of, in some regards, it's its own separate thing just because of the process that they go through, the information that they have, how they take you through, do they respond to you, do they not respond to you? All of those things may not have much to do with what it's going to be like to work there. So any other thoughts around that, Tammy, that we can address?
So I decided to move forward with the process because, generally when a recruiter calls, you take the call, right? You never know, whatever. So I put some faith in, and they definitely, as they are scheduling these interviews, they definitely made the promise to me that, and that's why I felt better. I'm going to find out exactly who's on the roster and let you know before I schedule these.
Exactly.
And so
that's right.
That made me feel better. But it just, I guess it was a little shocking to me that, someone would pick up a phone call and not, and I would think that everyone knows about job descriptions, right? They describe the job that the last person who had it did. Maybe half of those problems are solved already, and the job actually looks quite different, now that they're looking to, fill that vacancy. Yeah. And so you just want to make sure that, you are a fit, and this is interesting, and this is what I want to do. And that's why my first question was, how accurate is the job description?
Yeah, it is. You're right. Oftentimes it is built upon the last person's role. But then not only does the job typically change once you get on board because life changes, they might customize it a bit for you because of your skill set, right? So all of all of that's up for the taking, right? Once you start. I kind of like to say, you know, but with on your first day, your first week, your first month, about 25% of your job is probably going to change. It just is. Life, circumstances, you, them, right? It's people. Everybody's doing their best guess when they put a job description down, but it's not a robotic thing, right? There's sort of this fluidity that happens. All right, so we're going to
one quick sentence before Erica jumps in. Everybody on the call, be prepared to interview them.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just arrive at the interview to answer questions.
That's right.
Be prepared to even lead the interview, as we're talking
Oh
about
my
now.
gosh.
If you get in and you're like, these people have no idea what they're doing, so let me ask some questions. Give me an overview. I was looking at the job description. I couldn't really figure it out. So can you give me a quick overview before I answer that question? There you go.
Alki, I could not have paid you money to say that. That is literally what Erica is going to be talking about. I mean, you couldn't have teed it up better. Erica, would you like to take
Sorry, Erica.
That's great.
Kind of stole my thunder a little bit, but I'll add some color to my story.
Great.
So hi everyone, I'm Erica. I've been job searching for a while. I've had varied success with my interviews, applying all the techniques that y'all have been talking about. I work in a very technical field. I work in quality assurance and project management for medical devices. And I keep like getting interviews and then coming up second or third or not being called back, which has kind of never happened to me. Like I've had a really successful 20 years. So I've been working with Shira to be like, let's level up my interview skills from like a B to an A. And I had an interview last week where it was for a contractor role. On paper, it was a perfect fit. So I go in there like expecting this to be a slam dunk, and they basically set me up for failure. And I had the recruiter from the company was on the call, and I debriefed with them afterwards, and we both were kind of like, what is going on? Like they wanted me to they wanted me to merge some quality systems, and they asked me, they're like, oh, so how would you merge these quality systems? I'm like, oh, here's what I would do. And then the feedback I got was, oh, well, we think that she would add too many procedures. And they had mentioned on the call that they had a quality plan and the way they were going to do it, but that's not what they asked me. Like, if that's what they wanted to know, they should have said, oh, we have these 26 quality plans already. How would you pick up from those and pick up where we're at? But that's not what they asked me. Okay. So the lesson learned there for me was like, F this, I'm not going to do this anymore. What can I do differently? So the positive story which Shira had wanted me to share is that I had 2 interviews this week, one in particular yesterday, where I strategized before the call and I said, I'm going to get on there, and before they ask me any question, I'm going to ask them, tell me a little bit about the role. Tell me a little bit about what you're looking for, so that whatever they ask me after that, I can sort of tailor my responses to this specific experience. So that started an interview yesterday for a quality engineer position. And he was like, oh, I have some questions to ask you. And I'm like, cool. Before we start, would you mind telling me a little bit about the role? And we ended up just having an organic conversation where he's telling me about the role and I'm like, oh yeah, I've done this or that, or he's telling me about his problem. I'm like, yeah, I totally understand that problem. Here's how I've solved that problem in the past. So it was a conversation. And then we were starting to get to the end and I was like, oh, so did you have any questions on your list that I didn't get to or that you didn't get to? He's like, no, like I think we covered it. And then he said, I'm the kind of person who realizes that there's more than one right way to do things. And he went so far as to say, like, by that time he was like, oh, I'm convinced, you'll go on to the next phase of the cross-functional interview. And then he also said, because I'm really looking for someone who can come in and challenge the status quo. Kind of like you did at the beginning of the meeting where you said, you know, hey, do we mind if you answer my question before you ask all your questions? So I came out of that pretty positive and energized and looking forward to doing the same thing in the next round of interviews, because I really got to that point where I was like, I cannot take this anymore, and I'm not gonna fail interviews because they don't know how to give me an
Interview.
introduction.
Yeah. So thank you, Erica. And the metaphor that I give there is I say that your interviews should be a game of tennis, not racquetball. Most interviews are a game of racquetball. They got the ball and they're hitting against the wall. And they Q and you A, and they Q and you A, right? And you're supposed to like A in a way that understanding and if you don't have the backstory to Erica's point, which usually you don't, you might give a response that's completely off base, and then they have to re-ask it or they have to probe, and then there's misunderstanding. Whereas if you make it a game of tennis, right, then it's more of a QA, you're backing and forthing. But if you frame it like Erica did and say, can I get a little more color around the role? Then you really can have this game of tennis back and forth. They're asking, you're answering, you're asking, they're answering your question, right? And then it's an organic process, meaning take a little bit of control. Most job seekers, and let me say this to people on this call, if you are on this call because likely you are an active job seeker. And not only are you an active job seeker, many of you, if not most of you, are in transition and maybe even in long-term transition. When that happens, psychologically, what you don't even realize that is going on is that the relationship between you and the employer goes like this. You walk into the interview feeling like you're a subordinate, and you're not. You're not a subordinate. You're just as important as they are. They have a business need. You have job skills that can fill that need. You are equals here. They might be a higher title, but that's irrelevant. As people, you're the same, right? You're going to do good work and get a good wage, hopefully, right? And as a result, you need to see this as a relationship. I equated, the job to dating. Right? You're seeing if this is an interview is a date. You're seeing if you can live together. Are you compatible? That means you have to understand what their needs are. And that job description is only going to give you so much information. As whoever it was we were just talking about earlier, right? There's so much more, Tammy, right? There's so much more color behind this job than what's on paper. And it's your job to sort of elucidate that and then answer the questions in a way that's meaningful. Alki or Vern, any other thoughts on that?
Well, much like we were saying, there's good recruiters and not so good recruiters. There are people who are not very good at interviewing.
Right.
You go into a company and they're the person who's interviewing you. And, to Erica's story, again, we say this on the call all the time, make sure you're prepared to ask questions as you go into that interview and turn it into, as Shira said, more of a tennis match. What does success look like in this job? If you hired me and 6 months from now, you said I was doing a really great job, what would I be doing? What would I have achieved? What problems would I have solved? So you're trying to get down to the specifics so that you're in a better position to then give them a specific example, a specific story about how you've done exactly what they're looking to have done. And as you said, Erica, they set you up for failure because you told them what you would do, but the way they asked the question, it didn't resonate with them. So.
No two recruiters are identical, even within the same company. And it's not necessarily a good or bad. I've worked with companies where they do have a standard protocol, a standard culture, a standard approach that they take with recruitment. And so they're relatively uniform, but every recruiter, every interview is most likely going to be different. And so you have to kind of expect A to Z and then double those letters to AABB all the way to ZZ, because you could have a great interview Monday and then your interview on Tuesday's terrible or different. And so it's interviewing in the job search is a proactive game. It's an active game. It's you do have to react like tennis. You have to wait for their serve or their volley to come to you. So it's both, but you have to expect to be very, very active, because the person on the other side of the net, even though they're holding a racket, i.e. they're a recruiter, they should know how to recruit. They may not, and you may have to show them how to volley, how to serve, how to backhand, all that kind of stuff.
So before we go into Tangi, and I know we have 4 questions and very little time, I did want to answer one question in the, let's see, is Leslie, you're still here, Leslie. You said the pros and cons of applying via LinkedIn versus directly on the company site. I would do both. I wouldn't even say pro and con, just do both. Because you never know where they're going to see you. Yeah, you can apply. Look, I had it happen yesterday, where I think it was yesterday, where I'm in a search and somebody applied on LinkedIn. She took the proactive stance of actually applying to went around me. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this, although it caught my attention. She applied directly to the employer, and then the employer forwarded me the resume. So I saw her twice. Okay. Not necessarily recommending you go around recruiters, but even so, the point is that you can apply this way, apply that way, get an internal champion, do all the different things you need to do to make sure that you're getting seen. Because you know, to our points earlier, you may not be seen on LinkedIn, but you also may not be seen on the website. You might be seen one or the other. And if they see you twice, that's okay. No big deal. Apply it every which way you can. Get yourself noticed every which way you can. Okay. All right. Tangi, Carrie, Lydia, and John. And again, we're kind of running out of time, so we'll probably have to keep these remaining questions fairly tight.
Thanks, Shira. Actually, you led right into that when you said the person went around you, because I was sitting here throughout the conversation, and I've noticed that external recruiters sometimes are not as friendly or as accommodating as internal are. And originally, my question was going to be, how do you get a nudge in when somebody is an external recruiter? And a lot of small companies now are using external recruiters.
Right.
Have the time for the HR person to do that, but also like when you said this person went around you, so now you're the recruiter and you could be actually mad because they did that and toss that person.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you would do that, but
I
some
know.
recruiters are like that.
Right.
So how do you deal with these external recruiters?
That's a great question.
Because they don't know anything and they have no heart in the game.
Absolutely. So here's what I would not actually recommend to go around in the sense of you applying directly to the employer, because the whole point of them using a recruiter is that the employer wants to protect their time. With that said, in my opinion, Alki and Vern, you can chime in here. I don't think there's anything wrong with you having a referral or a recommender to go to the employer and say, hey, CEO, hey, hiring manager, I heard that, you know, Amanda is, you know, part of the mix here. I just wanted to put in a good recommendation. That's okay. Because then the employer is saying, oh, wow, we've heard some good things about Amanda. So, hey, recruiter, right? You may want to give this person extra consideration. And I've had that happen when I've done, especially when I do executive searches. I've noticed more so than others, like a CEO search. The board of directors will sometimes get referrals, or a member of that organization, right? Will chime in, and then I get some calls from the board or from the CEO saying, "Hey, so and so has been recommended. Would you please put them in the mix?" And at the very least, I need to give them a courtesy interview. At the very, very least. So it's that to me is not a bad thing. I just wouldn't necessarily go around and for all intents and but by the way, I just have to share something. The context that person wrote the employer, they didn't actually know that there was a third party like me, because this job happened to be posted on an industry website. So the person wrote and said, look, I'm not sure if my application is going to go successfully through the portal of that job board. So that's why I'm writing to you directly. So they actually didn't even know that there was a third party involved. So I think in that case, it was fine. But I have no problem with you having somebody else recommend you internally. Alki or Vern, do you have other thoughts on that?
No, do it. Anybody that can recommend you internally, just have it happen.
Right. Yeah, but if you know there's a third party, you shouldn't be applying into the company directly. Respect the process, but you can have somebody recommend you so that your candidacy is flagged. That's the difference.
Time's sake, I'll leave it there.
Okay. Carrie?
I'll try to keep this brief in the interest of time, but recently I've been augmenting my networking with volunteering with some pretty good results. Briefly, pros and cons to volunteering. Sometimes also, sometimes that volunteering is free consulting. Pros and cons to that.
Sure. So the lots of pros. So A is just a good thing to do. It's just good to give back anyway, of course. You are offering you're building your skills. You have something to put on your resume, right? That shows, what you're doing. You're building your network. You never know if that organization could hire you full time. All these different things. Now, the cons, if the volunteer work you're doing is completely outside of your field and you put that on your resume, for some people that is the case, right? And so you want to be judicious as to whether you put it on there and how you put it on there. Do you put it on LinkedIn? Do you put it on LinkedIn in the experience section? Do you put it in the volunteer section? So those are some considerations. But to your question, Carrie, about free consulting advice, look, I as far as I'm concerned, give it away to a point. Okay. Now, if it gets to a point, there's actually someone on this call. I won't call this person out, but this person wrote me yesterday. They'll know who they are in a second. This person wrote to me yesterday and saying, "Hey, for the last 6 months, I've been giving advice to this organization for free." And finally, I got to a place where I'm like, so and so, we actually need to formalize this. Okay. So at some point, Carrie, you may say to that person, look, I appreciate, I'm happy to give and happy to give, right? We're getting to a point now where I think it might make sense for us to formalize the engagement. And is there some way that we can do that would be appropriate? You'll know. Now, then again, volunteers give away free advice all the time. I mean, that actually is kind of the point of being a volunteer. You're helping and you're supporting. The question is, do you feel like you're getting to a place where it really is turning into more of a employment, or is it just really something you're just happy to give? That's really up to you, frankly, as to where you feel that line is. But I would have an open and honest conversation with them. So.
Just one other major pro to volunteering. So you go to an interview and they say, tell me about your skills. Well, you're telling them about your particular skills, but they really have no way to verify whether you really have those skills at that point.
Right.
When you are volunteering, you're demonstrating your skills to others that you're volunteering with. You're demonstrating your communication skills, your project management skills, whatever skills you have, people are seeing that and they're experiencing that. And that's very different than what happens in an interview. And so people get to, again, this goes back to teaching and giving. You're demonstrating your skills and people are learning about you. So they're in a better position to talk about your skills to others or to be aware of open positions that might fit your skills. So.
Is that helpful, Carrie?
Yeah, I would just add one thing, that in the free consulting, I do believe that currency in your job search is also currency. And so LinkedIn recommendations, I think it's appropriate if I'm not being paid, opportunities for visibility and LinkedIn job searches, it's okay to ask for that. And I have in both ways.
Yeah.
Is that if I do a good job, just make sure people outside know I've done a good job, because I'm still looking.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Lydia, and then John.
Yes, very briefly. I've had 2 phone interviews, and both of them I was asked if I had questions. I'd done my research, I had looked at the job, the opportunity, everything about it, and I didn't have any questions. Do you have to have questions for a phone interview? And they had gone over the position clearly.
So here's what I would suggest that you do for that, because asking questions is very, very important in an interview. Lydia, think to yourself, if this was your first day on the job, what questions would you have? You're going to have some questions.
Definitely. I was
yourself.
thinking that maybe because it's a phone interview, I shouldn't go deep into it. But even on the first interview, like a phone interview, I should go into that.
Yeah, so that's a great
Okay.
question. If it's the phone interview, here's the thing. There's what you should be asking, and then there's what they are able to answer.
Okay.
Let me say this really clearly. You are welcome to stump the recruiter.
Okay. Got you.
You are welcome to stump the recruiter. Highly recommend it.
Mhm.
You can ask deeper questions, and even if the recruiter says, "Oh, I can't answer," that's okay. They'll show that says to them you're asking a smart question.
Mhm.
That's all right. Have questions, whatever you want. They can always say, "Oh, that's a great question, Lydia. Let's reserve that for the hiring manager."
Mhm.
But you don't want to have if you don't have any questions, that's going to make them think you're not a critical thinker, which I know you are. So you want to make sure that you have some deeper questions lined up, not necessarily the basics, but
Mhm.
just like deeper things around the role and then the scope and challenges and resources and whatever else. Anything you can think of, things that you would ask on your first day on the job, feel
Mhm.
free to ask one or two of those questions so that they can see that you're thinking well. And by the way, just for
Sure.
yourself too, you may want to get some stuff answered.
Sure. And then quickly, this is my last question. I have one 3-person virtual interview coming up. It's a bit intimidating. I've done that before. What are some of the things that I should look at? Because I have another one in the pipeline so that I can use it for that one too.
And I know I've been talking a lot. Alki or Vern, you want to take this?
I didn't quite,
She has a
what
panel,
was
she has
the question?
she has a virtual 3-person panel interview coming up and she wants some tips.
Hmm. I don't think I'd have any other tips, whether it was virtual or, in person. Um, I mean, there's gonna be a panel. Again, make sure that it's virtual, that you're able, hopefully ahead of time, to know who's on the panel, what their name is, what their role is, what their title is. Think about questions that might be appropriate for the different people on the panel. Elke, anything else you would add?
Yeah, yep, those are good. What Shira said as well about treating, and this is just advice for all interviews, treat it like it's your first meeting. You've been hired and you're part of the team now, and you're arriving when they tell you Monday morning, show up, you have a 9 o'clock, we have a team meeting or we have a department meeting. Sometimes it helps. I can't guarantee it because every person's different, but treat it like a meeting as well. You're just talking to 3 people, and I would answer whatever questions I'm asked directly. But as Shira says on this call often, answer it as if you're talking to all 3 people. Be engaging as much as you can. I always tell candidates to treat it like a meeting, like these people already first day or the first 2 or 3 weeks, or you've been there for 6 months and you've been meeting every Tuesday, and just treat it that way, like it's a meeting. I tell candidates that because it helps in your mind to switch from them being, hey, who are these new strangers who are grilling
True.
me, to I know these people. I know the job. If it's your industry and your lane that you've been doing already, this stuff. They should be asking you questions that you should be able to speak to. It's just a different environment, and maybe the questions are framed different. But you should, if it's a job that's in your lane, you should be able to speak to some of it, and then, hey, flip it back on them with good questions as well, like Shira said, to put them back on their heels. If you ever feel nervous in a job interview, that's where those good questions can come in, because you may be nervous, but then if you pop a smart and wise question to them, that knocks them back for a second to go, wow, we weren't expecting that. What a great question. And a lot of times we, since I've been on the other side of those panels, we can't tell you're nervous anymore, because we're like, wow, that's the questions we've been talking about for the last 6 years in this meeting. So,
And I'll just wrap up with one last thing. How you open the call matters. First impressions matter. When you get on that call, by the way, this is even for a one-on-one, but certainly for a group interview. When you want to get on that call, you want to be your sunny self. Okay. Be warm, be relational. As people are getting on the call, you might be the first person on the call, you might be the 4th person on the call, doesn't matter. You want to say hi everyone and be yourself, right? And oh, hi John, nice to meet you, da da da. Maybe a little bit of a little casual icebreaker, something about the weather, something about something innocuous. where you get people laughing, you get people smiling, you get them warm and engaged. Those first few seconds, that first minute matters. Don't hold back. Don't be reserved. Don't be, just be your warm relational self, because you want to Alki's point, if you've already been meeting with them every Tuesday, you're going to be a normal, warm relational person. Be that now and get everybody engaged. And hopefully they're going to go around the room and introduce themselves. And every time they do, say, oh, hi, John will say, oh, my name is John, da, 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 da. And you say, hi, John, nice to meet you. And, you know, make a personal connection. And the last thing I would say is that when one person asks you a question, they're actually asking it on behalf of the whole group. Okay, so make sure that you address it in that way, not just to John, but that you're addressing it to everyone. And by the way, if you're in person, that's even more so. If you're sitting around a conference table, you don't just look at John and answer their question, you look at everybody, because they're asking on behalf of the group.
Wow, that's powerful. Thank you.
Sure. All right, John, and then we'll wrap up.
I learned from JCA that the chances of landing a job through applications and resumes is about 8%. So to me, you know, the chances are more if one concentrates on networking.
That's right.
But however, how about trying for jobs through recruitment agencies rather?
Yeah. So yeah, I would not recommend that anybody put any significant effort in that route. I'm not saying you can't get a job through a recruiter, but recruiters are not actually there for the job seeker. They're there for the employer, right? So they are just like, and a third-party recruiter is not that much different than an internal recruiter or an internal HR person. It's just a third party. So the employer hires the recruiter because, you know, they need extra help or what have you, but that a recruiter is being hired by the employer. They will place you in the job, but they're not out there representing you, right? So there's a sort of a myth in the market where people say, oh, I need to kind of work with a recruiter. That's not actually the case. The employer is working with the recruiter. Now, with that said, if you can find recruiters who specialize in your career vertical or in your industry, you are absolutely welcome to link in with them, get on their radar. You never know. You could be part of their database. They might have an opportunity that just happens to be the right fit. Fantastic. Like in my case, I work almost 98% of the time with associations. So people who are in the association community often link in with me, and then I can find them. Okay. But I don't do commercial real estate, right? I don't do whatever. And so if someone's a commercial real estate field and they want to link in with me, that's not really going to do them much good. Okay. But even so, you should never put your eggs in that recruiter's basket, because they're going to get a niche search, unicorn requirements that you may or may not be a fit for. Does that make sense? So feel free to, and just don't have much expectation around that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Alki, anything else you want to comment around that, since you're also a recruiter?
I apologize. I missed it. I was in the chat.
Oh, thank you for doing the chat, by the way. I noticed you doing. Yeah, John was just asking about working with recruiters, and you know, should he be kind of investing time into that? And I was saying no, that the employer is really, it's the relationship with the employer that is, you know, is there, and link in with us, but not to have too much expectation around it.
Yeah, agreed with that. And I mean, recruiters can help in your, well, you hope they can help in your search.
Right.
The good ones, you know, maybe they have something now, maybe they have something up the road. So yeah, it pays to have, you know, to build good relationships. At the end of the day, though, it's that ultimate relationship that you want with the employer. So we are liaisons, and that's what our job should be, is to try to see if we can get you connected with the people doing the hiring.
So actually, we really need to kind of wrap up. I'm sorry, I wanted John to be the last one. Lydia, do you have a tiny little question? Because we're a little bit over time.
No, I didn't. I forgot to put my hands down.
Okay. All right, everyone. So this has been a great call. We keep getting more people, so it's understandable that we'd go a little bit over time. Thanks for sticking around with us. For those of you who are new to the call, just wanted to let you all know that we're going to formally end this part of the call, but if you'd like to stick around for a prayer call that I'm going to be leading afterwards, you're certainly welcome to do that. Okay. And for everyone else, we're going to meet, as you might know, every other Friday, right? So we'll be meeting 2 weeks from now. Okay, and I will do this. I don't remember when July 4th is, that whole July 4th, 5th. I do plan to be here on July 5th. Okay, if anyone's around. All right, have a blessed day, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.